far as I'm concerned, the Rainbow Six franchise has been over for 16 years. What about Rainbow Six Siege? Siege is pathetic. Some of you may have seen this viral tweet from Commander Carl, and I weighed in that Rainbow Six is giving COD a run for its money to see who can abandon its identity the most. After I graduated college, one of my roommates had Rainbow Six Siege. I bounced hard off the gameplay, but it took years for the game to mutate into the abomination it is now. Don't even get me started on whatever Rainbow Six Extraction is. I heard it was an extraction shooter with aliens, and left the chat. Do you remember Rainbow Six Vegas 1 and 2? The last good Rainbow Six games? The swan song of the series? The final installments that possess a shred of dignity or Tom Clancy identity? Both Vegas titles were incredibly formative for me as a gamer, and their shadows loom large over the disgraceful direction the series has taken. Why? Let's jump in. The biggest thing I was struck by when I replayed both campaigns was how little I remembered of either of them. You see, both Vegas titles have 3 game modes: Campaign, Adversarial, and Terrorist Hunt. Terrorist Hunt, or T-Hunt, spawns you into one of the multiplayer maps solo or with friends to simply kill all the enemies. My buddies and I would play Adversarial multiplayer a lot, and a decent amount of T-Hunt, hundreds of hours in each game. These kept us busy and were good for pick up and play, but man, it's apparent to me now how little we touched the story mode. For this video, I mainly replayed both campaigns, but I will offer some commentary on the other modes as well. What I harped on in the intro and what I will continue to harp on throughout this video is how Vegas was the last time Rainbow Six as a franchise resembled Rainbow Six. So real quick, let me explain what that was. Rainbow Six started as a book from acclaimed author Tom Clancy. Like the rest of his creative works, it was grounded in realism and authenticity. It took itself and its subject matter seriously. Rainbow is a fictitious international counter-terror unit made up of special operators from across NATO. Six is a call sign denoting a unit CO, so Rainbow Six is actually the title of their commander. Clancy wrote exactly one Rainbow Six novel. The rest of the series has existed almost exclusively in the world of video games. Rainbow Six, the game, started as a very cerebral, tactical shooter. I've never played it, but my understanding is it had a somewhat narrow appeal because of its painstaking mission planning and unforgiving gunplay. A run-and-gun shooter, this was not. Although, sales numbers were actually pretty good, so presumably the appeal wasn't too narrow. But as these things tend to, Rainbow Six, along with all of the other Clancy franchises, progressively got more approachable and less tactical, trying to broaden their appeal at the possible expense of alienating their hardcore base. In fact, there is a certain class of Clancy fan out there who regard this era of games, such as Rainbow Six Vegas, Ghost Recon Future Soldier, and Splinter Cell Conviction, as shadows of their former selves. I sympathize with their position, but I think each of these titles has tons of redeeming qualities. Enter Rainbow Six Vegas. Released in 2006, it was the series' debut on 7th generation consoles, and it promised brand new gameplay and visuals in a unique setting. Maybe it was less tactical than its older siblings, but would it compensate by being more accessible and exciting? Oh yeah. Alright, let's talk about the game. The first game starts when you and your squad of 3 land in Mexico. Hold up, I'm gonna stop you right there. Mexico? Mexico ain't no NATO country. Why is a NATO unit operating in Mexico? Did they invite you? Whatever. You're looking for a terrorist leader named Irina Morales. It was hard to pay attention to the intro mission brief because it looks, to quote my notes, tragic. Everyone looks so weird. The intro brief is short, and we just sit there in silence with Gabe staring at me. The graphics are okay, but definitely look dated. The concept of deploying in this mega high-tech helicopter with our Intello sitting on her laptop is silly, but whatever. Let's go shoot some bad guys. You touch down and check out these horrible jaggies on the flags. For a second I thought the game was pulling a depth of field trick because my barrel and reflex sight looks so blurry. At this point, I started to panic a little bit. Am I about to have a games I wish I'd never replayed moment? The Mexico level is very much an intro tutorial type thing. They slowly introduce you to the gameplay first without your squad. I got to flank these guys by sauntering across the street and coming up on their side even though they watched me do it. And there are all these objects littered around the cover surfaces that are just begging to be shot to show off the physics. Oh, 2006. Eventually you link back up with your team and the game begins easing you into the squad mechanics. And the dialogue.
Glad you made it, Keller. I thought you took a hitter off the chopper back there. And failed his first assignment as team command? I doubt it.
Okay, so the dialogue is pretty hammy. Rolling into the train yard and not being able to vault over some small cinder blocks or train cars is like, What? I don't know how apparent this is by watching rather than playing, but the Vegas games are maybe not clunky, but stilted. They're a little stiff. Movement speed is slow, player actions are slow, there's no jump, contextual vaults or climbs over obstacles are lacking. This isn't all bad necessarily, but sometimes it just makes the player feel impotent. I'll touch on this again because Vegas 1 is sorely lacking a sprint, but Vegas 2 adds one. Rappelling is still great, and the invert is still the most gangster thing ever. And it's very smart letting your zoom do extra work from the rope as compared to when you're just on a wall. Compare the third-person zoom effect from cover versus on a rope and you'll see what I mean. To enable players to effectively shoot from a rope, this is a terrific way to do it. So like I said, the Mexico level is very much a Vegas 101 class, which, you know, it's the first level of the game. They used to be like that. And this is where it gets interesting though. As a young lad, I thought the Vegas games were considered the lightest on tactics and team mechanics, though that impression came mainly from what other people told me about the series. Yet as I sat down to explain here what they are, it actually gave me pause. There's a decent amount of depth to the tactics in this tactical shooter. With the press of a button, you can look anywhere and order your team to move there. This comes in handy for a few reasons that I'll get to in a minute, but on a basic level, this is useful for sending your teammates to scout or clear an area without endangering yourself. You can revive your downed teammates anytime you need to, but if you get blindsided by some a-hole with a shotgun or a sniper rifle, it's quitance for you, bucko. Back to the checkpoint. Aside from sending them into the fray as canaries, you can order them to take contextual actions. This could be stacking up to breach a door, climbing a ladder, hooking up to use a fast rope or rappel, disarming a bomb, or something else. Another button press brings them back to you. If you put a sound suppressor on your weapon, Logan will tell the other two to do the same, ensuring they don't blow your cover if you're trying to be sneaky.
Go silent. Acknowledge.
Once they're stacked up to breach a door, you have multiple options. They can enter and clear, breach and clear, or frag and clear, but you can also change the rules of engagement. In Assault, they will fire at any threat, use loud weapons, and ruthlessly clear areas. In Infiltrate, they will only fire when fired upon, use suppressed weapons, and wait for you to give the order before clearing an area, which allows you the flexibility to start a fight at the time and in the manner of your choosing. Accordingly, if you stack them up on a door and change their ROE to Infiltrate, you'll have the option to either have them smoke or flash and clear the room. You can tag up to 2 enemies at a time for them to target first, which is useful before a fight starts, especially before clearing a room, if you want them to hit specific tangos while you hit others. If there's already a fight on, it's good to have them prioritize particular enemies, a sniper, a turret gunner, someone with a shield, stuff like that. I didn't do too much of this during my playthrough, although it came in handy in some firefights like this one. On the subject of breaching, this is one of the highlights of the tactics in the game. You see, the way Vegas's levels are designed, they are a mix of open environments and enclosed spaces. Almost all of them are carefully built to offer multiple avenues of approach, whether you're free-flowing through a big arena or breaching a room. One of your best bets for success is to take advantage of this and divide and conquer. I have tons of footage of this, so this won't be the last you see of it, but this is fundamental to the gameplay of Vegas. Watch what we do. You come up to a room, note where the entrances are, use your snake cam to survey the enemy, pick the way in for you and your squad, pick your targets, and let her rip. The controls make this process fluid and enjoyable to do on the fly without too much fiddling. And it must be noted, your allied AI is savage. I have a lot of clips of them folding terrorists like laundry. Sometimes I ask myself what they even needed me for. This is key because there's a sweet spot in a game like this for friendly AI. If they're too good, you might feel like a third wheel as the friendly and enemy AI kill each other without you. If they're too bad, you might break your back carrying the whole team. And make no mistake, this is a game designed to be played with capable partners, be they human or computer controlled. In both Vegas titles, there are a small number of solo sections, and they are some of the most challenging and dangerous sections in either game. Thankfully, your AI team is handy in a fight and pulls their weight. This is especially true when the environments open up and you have to carve a path on the fly as enemies careen towards you with reckless abandon. You can maneuver through the environment as a squad, or you can send your men in one direction while you take another. As you go, you can order them to take specific cover and punch through, but you can't be micromanaging them, so the fact that they can hold their own is essential. It's honestly a blast either way you do it. This one on Fremont Street was especially memorable. I could have sent them up the ladder, but then I wouldn't be able to control them past that, so you best believe I seized that high ground. And then we went to work. and it's not a two-dimensional problem set. Sure, there are rooms with more than one door or window as entry points, but the game will offer you a rappel or fast rope option to really raise the stakes. I had a couple breaches where I sent my team in through a door while I shot down from the roof through a skylight, or slid down a fast rope to join the fray from a surprise angle. It's so much more exhilarating than even the scripted stuff. It's where Vegas really shines. Not only had I forgotten a lot of the moment-to-moment campaign details, I also think I had unfairly regarded the campaign as overly linear or claustrophobic. It's a linear game in the truest sense of the word, but by the time you get dumped into the streets of Vegas, the game shows you that it's not messing around. You have to really be careful about where you position yourself and your team to cover all the angles. You can't really cover everything sometimes, and it creates a sense of urgency and unease. For instance, I was caught off guard by how much this firefight stretched me tactically. It's the first thing you do after your Mexico mission. It killed me once because I got sloppy. You must proceed with caution and not get scope locked on one target or sector. I did not expect that they would play hardball with me the second they took off the training wheels. This is good.
I have found the place where I am to die.
November of 2006 saw two high-profile shooters release on the Xbox 360, Gears of War and Vegas 1. While one is a first-person shooter and the other a third-person shooter, both featured their own takes on cover systems, which would go on to heavily influence the direction of shooters for at least another generation. Rainbow's cover system is excellent. You can approach a surface and hold the left trigger, and the camera seamlessly transitions to a third-person view. From there, you can pivot over or around the cover to take accurate shots, and certain cover geometry supports an additional pivot over or around to survey even more. This may not seem like much, but it feels really good to be able to do this, and you really miss it when you're mounted somewhere that doesn't support it. You can step back twice to reset, or you can let go of the control stick and instantly duck back to where you were. You can shoot without pivoting to blind fire, which is super inaccurate but useful in certain situations. You can also throw grenades, give commands, reload, switch weapons, equip a suppressor, and basically do whatever you need, all from cover. If you're taking cover by a window and you want to shoot through it, your character will break it open when you pull the trigger, which is a pretty cool touch. Because the industry standard has become left trigger to aim down sights, most shooters now put cover on a face button like Gears of War or Ghost Recon. Call me old-fashioned, but I still love when aim down sights is assigned to the right thumbstick click, and holding the left trigger to stay mounted to cover connects you as a player more to the slab of concrete saving your life than if you just tap A once to plant your back to the wall. Kind of like holding Yorda's hand in Eco, except Rainbow Six Vegas is actually fun. Yeah, I went there. Sorry. Point is, the cover system in Vegas is great. This will come up later, but the Vegas games are pretty janky, and the cover system is not exempt. Sometimes you'll be taking cover, but your character will be exposed because it's not correctly mapped, and there's nothing you can do about it except find some real estate somewhere else. Or, you know, this will happen. If you're new here, hi, welcome to my channel. I'm glad you're here. If you're not new, well, chances are you've heard me talk about at least one super minor gameplay thing that struck you as way less significant than most other game critics would analyze. Here's one for you. Rainbow Six's aiming reticle. It's a weird one, right? Plenty of shooters use some variation of the cross or plus-shaped reticle that spreads or blooms as you move around or shoot your weapon, where the spread of the reticle indicates the possible trajectories of your shots. The wider it is, the less accurate your fire will be. Most of you will be familiar with how this works and don't need it explained. What might be less familiar is that circle. What's that doing there? As the four dots expand, the circle shrinks. As you aim down sights, the circle expands. What's going on here? The answer goes back at least as far as Rainbow Six 3, maybe farther. You see, in Rainbow Six 3, the circle was the only part of the reticle, and it behaved the way the circle does in Vegas. As you move, it shrinks. The circle is basically an aim assist. If a target is anywhere within the circle, your shot may hit it, even if it is slightly off center. As you move, the assist diminishes until it's just the center dot. Your shots are either dead on, or they miss. This is kind of a nice system when you think about it. Here you are playing these world-class special operators with impeccable marksmanship, so it makes sense for the game to give you a slight aid and help your shots find their mark sometimes, even when your reticle was a little bit off target. In Rainbow Six 3, the minimal dot is on screen no matter what, which is also nice, because a top-tier marksman is still going to be able to shoot on the move. It's just going to be way harder to do it well. Therefore, it makes sense to let a skilled gamer still shoot on the move if they can hack it with just the tiny reticle. In the Vegas titles, the reticle is constantly doing a slinky between its various shapes and sizes, including vanishing altogether, but you can still pull off accurate shots on the move, depending on if you're crouching, what kind of gun you're using, etc. The health system is your standard mid-2000s shooter fare. You get hit, you sit it out for a few moments, your health recharges, and you're back at it. Your vision goes more and more wonky the more damage you take, which is a cool touch, but at the end of the day, it's just one of those changes made to Rainbow Six that brought it more into line with the industry norms of the day, and while it's far less realistic, it's also undoubtedly an easier sell. I talked at length in my Modern Warfare Compared video, which all of you should go watch after this by the way, about how satisfying the gunplay in those games is, and why. Rainbow Six Vegas feels quite different from those games when it comes to shooting, and yet it's also incredibly satisfying to kill terrorists in this game, so I'm going to try to explain why. For starters, thank you for letting me select fire on every weapon at any time. This should be a feature in every game. You've seen it by now, but I'm a stickler for shooting on semi-auto. Even high rate of fire submachine guns still see use on single shot when I run them, depending on the situation. But semi-auto conserves ammo and retains accuracy, so you spend fewer rounds per kill, allowing more kills per reload. Sure, you don't send rounds downrange at the same rate as the other guy, but in my experience, you still get the edge because your shots stay on target, and you can still lay down some pretty intense semi-auto fire.
Fast. Unbelievably fast. That sounded like a single gunshot.
In any case, I do think part of the satisfaction I get from neutralizing tangos in the Vegas games comes from each individual trigger pull and watching enemies take hits one at a time. It helps that you can shoot as fast as you can pull the trigger, but for some reason they limit the rate of fire on pistols. This makes shooting them painful, but thankfully this was reversed in 2. You die fairly quickly, and so do your enemies, including from single body shots sometimes, not even just headshots. Vegas ragdoll physics are always good for something. Sometimes they really sell a convincing death. Other times they're great for a laugh. Related to this, the Vegas games occasionally allow you to stagger an enemy instead of kill them outright. It doesn't happen often, and sometimes it's so quick that you kill them with a follow-up shot before you realize that they were staggered. But it's a nice bonus to see when it happens. A few times I staggered someone and failed to finish them off right away, with humorous results. Enemies lose a decent bit of blood from hits, and the blood puffs from dead and alive alike. Combined with the way bodies collapse and crumple, you'll score some remarkable looking kills as consecutive shots spray blood out of a limp body believably falling to the ground. I used to say I've never seen the same death animation twice in Vegas, and I think that's overstating things somewhat, but the sentiment holds true. I will reiterate that sometimes the ragdoll physics produce some outrageous, hilarious results. But most of the time they take over flawlessly and yield impressive, varied death animations. Enemies will also whine and scream and yelp a lot, and while you hear the same noises over and over again, they almost make you feel bad for shooting them.
Take him down! Aim for the head!
The Vegas games do an admirable job of rendering and portraying their weapons correctly. It's not perfect, but most of my quibbles are minor. I mentioned before that they allow you to choose your fire mode, and most guns featured come with the correct options corresponding to their real-world counterparts. The game correctly handles the ammo count in your magazine and chamber based on whether you did a dry reload or not, and the reload animations are pretty realistic. There are a number of guns whose dry reloads are rendered not incorrectly, but they show you the manual of arms for how you would load an unloaded weapon instead of reload an empty weapon during shooting. Things like always cycling the bolt or the charging handle on guns that have bolt releases. Most players would not know or appreciate the difference. Another small critique is that they didn't go through the effort of rendering every weapon's unique dry reload animation from third person. All you get is a retimed standard animation that matches the longer one from first person, including the sound effects. It's hard to fault them for taking the shortcut, but sometimes the mismatch between the sounds and the avatar actions is pretty noticeable. You also gotta love the weapon crates. These things pop up everywhere, including some hilarious locations. These terrorists just make themselves right at home wherever they go, I guess. I had zero memory of there being exploding barrels in these games, but sometimes they're just what the doctor ordered. I alluded to it earlier, but Rainbow Six Vegas adopts a handful of attributes that would go on to become standard big-budget gaming tropes, though weirdly enough, while it seems like it's wearing a little Call of Duty 4 influence on its sleeve, it actually beat that game to market by a full year. Let me show you some examples. There are some moments that are definitely intended to wow you. Big, showy, holy crap events that just kind of happen but don't involve you directly. In this scene, a helicopter is shot down and crashes. In this one, a giant bell falls from its perch and crashes through multiple floors of this casino. In both cases, it's possible to completely miss the big moment if you're not looking in the right spot. I know this because I missed both moments the first time and saw them when I died and reloaded the checkpoint. In another part, a bomb goes off and we get an up-close view of it. This shock and awe moment lands the best out of them, partly because you are already looking right at it, but also it simply works. It's an impressive display, whereas the other two are somewhat underwhelming. Again, big showy moments usually involving destruction are totally part and parcel for this era of games. Another trademark is the big set piece battle. Vegas has a handful of these. Some of them are pretty gnarly and a lot of fun, setting a nice contrast against the standard encounters as you go from point A to point B and drop bad guys along your route. This one is pretty exciting, where one of your guys is hacking a computer and you have to fend off waves of enemies coming at you. Rainbow Six as a franchise has always been a more staid, considered shooter than many of its counterparts. So it would not surprise me if some of these additions to the formula rubbed longtime fans the wrong way, but I think the way they incorporated these elements is actually to their credit. As it turns out, they range from sort of lame to pretty fun, which suits the formula just fine. They don't redefine Rainbow's identity, they solidify it as a little bit stiff. When I first played Vegas, I was 13. All I knew about Las Vegas and casinos came from the Ocean's movies. So while shooting my way through glitzy casinos sounded sweet, I didn't really have as much context for what to expect as I thought I did. I've mentioned already that I either forgot a lot or misremembered a lot, and one thing I remembered dead wrong was that Vegas skimped out on proper casino shootouts. It really doesn't. The fictional Calypso Casino is arguably the biggest presence in the game as far as, well, what you think of when you think casino. Or at least what I thought as a kid. And it's a really well-conceived environment with some neat touches. I appreciated how it blended offices, staff areas, and casino floors all together. It's got some memorable areas. This one has giant aquariums with some cool textured glass. Throughout the game, there's also some grisly stage setting. An office with papers strewn about, dead bodies on the floor with blood smears, stuff like that. It's easy to overlook some of this, but when you stop and pay attention to it, it's good environmental storytelling. You'll eventually make your way to Calypso's vault, which is where 13-year-old Brent finally felt like he had arrived in Ocean's 11. It's a nifty area and it's got some cool lighting. But the important thing is there are loads of other casinos and appropriately glamorous areas to duke it out in that genuinely sell the Vegas flavor in a way that 13-year-old me just didn't appreciate. The Red Lotus Casino has some sprawling, gorgeous rooms to work with. This lounge area looks great and they really nailed the vibe. This flaming wreckage in the distance really landed for me, and of course the penthouse around me is awesome. Dante's Casino is under construction, boasting some really cool areas as you move in and out of sections in varying states of completion. The survey you get as you insert is especially cool. I have to hand it to Vegas. Between the complexity of the level designs and the Vegas flair imparted thereon, this game crushes it. Sometimes revisiting a game after a long time actually pays off. Since we're talking about the visual design, I will highlight just a couple things about the graphics that I haven't already. Some of it is just cool things I noticed and wanted to share. I played on Xbox Series X, where both games played in auto HDR, but unlike some titles, the added effect was not especially noticeable to me, but I'll point out a couple places where I think it's helping out somewhat, like this first view you get of Las Vegas from your helicopter. This would be the first of multiple views I got of the city that made me go, alright Vegas, not bad. Based on the brightness of the lights, I think maybe auto HDR is helping sell this one. Not mad about it. The Mexico level is bleak, but has a certain dreary beauty to it. I was surprised to walk into this room and see little dust motes in the light. Or this room and see the sunlight beaming in through gaps in the roof. Again, maybe some extra help from HDR here. Here's a moody little alcove that I think is heightened by auto HDR. Here is a skybox that goes way harder than it has any right to. I've always loved the way the glass sometimes spiderwebs with cracks when shot, and when you step up to it, you can break additional pieces off of it by staring at it very intently. I kid, I think the implication is you're breaking it with your muzzle. There's also some distortion when looking through the broken pieces. Overall, the graphics in Vegas 1 are decent. I think the jump from 1 to 2 is significant, although I lack the technical understanding to explain why. It's a shame though that neither of these games received the Xbox One X enhanced treatment. If they played in 4K or with faster load times or a higher frame rate, that would be fantastic. But then, who would put money into the slot machine that is Rainbow Six Siege? I'm not saying the reason these were never enhanced is because Ubisoft doesn't want to entice people to play games other than their cash cow. But I'm also not saying that. Both Vegas titles boast solid sound design for the most part. The dialogue isn't great, and the voice actors are all over the place. But when the shooting starts, it's an audio feast. One of the things I've always loved about it is how almost every gun in the game has a firing sound unique to it, including separate sounds for semi-auto and full auto fire. Back in my heyday, I could identify any gun before I saw it based on the sound. I think there might be some overlap with the sniper rifles and shotguns, but the bulk of the weapons have their own signatures. When you start doing the math on how many guns there are and how many of those have 2 sound effects each, the numbers pile up. It's a hefty sum. There's also great effects all around. I'll call out a couple here. I didn't notice it in too many locales, but you get a nice echo effect indoors, like here in the church.
Go, go, go.
I showed you this earlier, but listen to the buzzing of these giant neon signs. Or check this out. We're high up in a lounge somewhere with a bunch of shot out windows. You can hear the wind whistling in. I was so impressed by this little detail. Sometimes it's a combination of a gunshot plus something else. Try a chain link fence. The sound effect is just perfect. I'm rescuing Dr. Smythe in this casino shootout. The sound is great. Guns, sizzling sparks, plinky plonky slot machines pooping their last beeps, spitting out coins, lots of guns. This is from Vegas 2, which I haven't really introduced yet, but there's a mission where you insert with gas masks on, and they actually modify the dialogue so it sounds the part.
Mike, check it out. Careful, it might be wired. Chemical. We'll hit the arena first. It's the most likely target.
The Vegas games have okay music. It's actually better than I used to give it credit for. For instance, I'd forgotten about the menu music in one. Take a listen. This lonely trumpet in Mexico really makes you feel like you're all alone, though so does the fact that there's no one else on the street except bad guys. I'll touch on it again in Vegas 2, but there is some decent stuff here. Part of what makes the Vegas games so beloved is actually how janky they are, and goofy. It is unknown why the first response of many tangos is to throw smoke grenades when they do not possess thermal optics. I tried to stop the hostages from being executed here, and the Terrys didn't die? And this shadow glitch. Lots of goofs like this. Or this. This is a great one. I encountered a weird persistent glitch where it double fired when I was on semi and taking cover. Most of the NPCs in the game seem like they're a head taller than you when you're talking to them. I don't know why, but it's very disconcerting. Throughout both games, you will see allusions to other Ubisoft titles like these Splinter Cell arcade games or a giant poster for Far Cry 2. You'll also still see billboards with real-world ads on them, which was an innovation in the era. 2008. Simpler times. While some of these items are neutral or kind of funny, I also have a handful of critiques, some of which are addressed in 2. There are a couple of instances in both games where you have to escort civilians around. The only interaction you have with them is to tell them to either stay put or resume following you around. As you can see, this creates some annoying moments where you can put them somewhere safe, clear an area, and then trek a long way back to where you left them. Walk until you're arm's length from them, and then tell them to follow you again. A perfectly elegant solution to this problem would be letting you give them the follow or stay order just by aiming at them and pressing A. But they didn't do this for 1 or 2. You have night vision and thermal vision you can use at will. You can see the night vision on this one room in Vertigo Spire. It's a perfect illustration of how it's worthless. Honestly, both vision modes can't see very far at all, and it significantly hampers both of them. It's understandable that they would try to nerf the thermal vision so it's not overpowered, but the end result is something that barely qualifies as useful until or unless someone throws a smoke grenade. It's also kind of a joke that in dark rooms, I still ended up using thermals more than nods just because of how trash the night vision is. This super long epic fast rope was ruined by my speed being way too fast. Instead of getting a dope moment together with your boys, I just zip on down like I'm Sonic the frickin' Hedgehog. Also, this plot point with the bomb on the bridge was almost skipped because I walked past the NPC the first time. He tells you what you're walking into, and again, I only caught it the second time because I died the first time.
Center. But didn't you hear me? They said they'd blow up the bridge!
This dovetails nicely into discussing Vegas 2 because a lot of my serious critiques about 1 are directly addressed in 2. First and foremost, they added a sprint. Oh my goodness. There's nothing as demoralizing as trying to run to cover while getting shot at or trying to escape the blast radius of a grenade, while your character just nonchalantly trots along at a snail's pace. 2006 was right before the era where a sprint would have been considered mandatory in a first-person shooter, but even at the time, my friends and I were all kind of frustrated it didn't have one. Rest assured, the sprint makes a welcome appearance in 2, and the game makes sure you know about it right off the bat. It's not clear if this was a deliberate design choice or not, but you could use the sprint to cancel reloads if you were in a pinch, and the devs advertised it like it was an intentional strategy. I didn't use it often, but when the need was there, it was a nice feature to take advantage of. Another thing they thankfully added was permeable cover. This was another thing that, although COD 4 would make this commonplace the following year, Vegas 1 already felt like it was missing it at the time. I wouldn't say there's an abundance of permeable cover in Vegas 2, but I would say they did a pretty good job making bullets pierce materials that they ought to. Do you know what I mean? Like, generally, you don't try to shoot through something and get annoyed that it didn't work when it should have. For the most part, it just works the way you would expect, and it feels good to be able to hit people through material that isn't bulletproof in real life. It makes you as a player feel deadly, and it keeps you in the moment, whereas a sheet of plywood stopping a rifle round kind of takes you out of the game. One tiny thing that changed in 2 is your crosshair has to settle when you lean out from cover. The crosshair stays rock steady in 1, and while it's not a big deal when you're shooting AI enemies, it is pretty unfair in multiplayer. On that note, Vegas 2 added a multiplayer setting called High Stakes Mode. It eliminates health regen, starts you with less ammo, limits your HUD, and zooms the camera in when you're taking cover, so you don't get the free situational awareness while remaining out of sight. I always thought this was a cool way to play the game, but it was not very popular in my experience. You could see before joining a match if High Stakes Mode was enabled, and I seldom saw it. One of my biggest pet peeves playing through 1 was that it would reset my equipment preferences every time a new chapter or level loaded, or when I got done at a loadout crate. I would have to toggle semi-auto back on every time or re-equip a suppressor, things like that. It was maddening. Luckily, Vegas 2 remedied that and saved what little remains of my sanity. They also enable a little bit more customization, such as allowing you to add high-capacity magazines to most weapons in the arsenal, whereas Vegas 1 confined this choice to pistols. No shooter sequel would be complete without added weapons, and Vegas 2 adds a healthy amount. Weirdly, it seems like some of them are half-baked. The animations for some of the weapons are extremely janky, and the sound effects are whacked out too. The M468 and the Scorpion are the worst offenders. Hard to shake the feeling that these were slapdash jobs. They added some other stuff too. There's an on-screen grenade indicator, which is nice, since in real life, you would kind of know the general direction of a grenade if you heard it land near you. There are also some changes to the squad mechanics. Tagging enemies moves from the back or select button to the left bumper or L1 button, which means I used it way more often. They put a cap on how many breaches you can do of each type with your squad mates. It makes sense that they would restrict that so you can't abuse them too hard, although at 10 each, I never even came close to running out of any of them. Similarly, you can now order your teammates to throw grenades anywhere you point. This adds another nice layer of depth to the squad combat. You unlock another axis for controlling and exploiting your team, which is nice in and of itself, and it lets you take advantage of things like smoke grenades or flashbangs, even if you don't have any in your kit. A few times, I found myself in a position where the best way to advance was to cover my maneuver with a smoke grenade, but because I never carry any of them, I was able to leverage my team. Honestly, a nice little addition. I've never noticed that before. I gave them a command to move somewhere and they spent the whole trip leapfrogging from cover to cover and watching each other's movements. Later on, as I wrote this script, I watched the making of features on both bonus discs for the games, and they disclosed that this was a behavior they scripted for 2 that they were pretty stoked about. I thought it was cool that I only saw them do it once, but they still went through the effort of building it in there. Vegas 2 introduced something called Persistent Elite Creation, or PEC, something which I believe got imported into some of the other Clancy games. PEC has a couple cool things going for it. XP you rack up doing anything in any game mode. It all goes into one pot and helps you promote. There are also 3 categories in a system they call ACEs, which you level up by scoring certain kinds of kills. Promoting unlocks cosmetics for your character, and leveling up in ACEs unlocks different weapons and gadgets. The reason it's persistent is because you build progress toward these unlocks no matter what game mode you're playing, and they follow you no matter what game mode you're playing. In Vegas 1, you unlocked weapons in multiplayer by ranking up, whereas in campaign you did it by picking up new weapons off the ground and holding on to them until a level ended. In Vegas 2, you can use whatever weapon in whatever mode once you unlock it. The other neat thing is you create and customize a character. Similar to 1, this character called your Elite follows you into whatever game mode you play, so your clothing, camo pattern, armor, and outfitting are all preserved across game modes, hence the Elite creation part. For my money, this is a thoughtful progression system that rewards players for their effort and loyalty to the game without a whiff of microtransaction or battle pass nonsense. I don't know if I would keep the giant progress bar on the bottom of the screen at all times, and I'm of two minds about the on-screen progress updates. It's a certain level of satisfying when you score a triple kill or a one-shot double kill and the game notifies you, but it's also kind of distracting. Overall, both things tend to fade into the background to the point where you don't really notice anymore. Booting up Vegas 2, it's instantly apparent how improved it is. The menu is already better, and you get the cool room with your character. The opening text is slick and good looking. The character models in this intro look good. Is it a higher poly, higher res? Might just be the environment or the lighting. I don't know. And when you compare the interiors of the helicopters in both games, it is night and day. My gun feels and sounds hefty, even suppressed. And the blood mists are prominent, but not over the top. Also, the song playing here is actually a dope riff on the main theme.
We can equip ourselves here.
The voice actor for Bishop is way better than Walker.
It's over. We freed the hostages, but Monroe is dead. We need to talk later.
The new guy they cast for Mike sounds terrible.
Hey, Teach. Should we go after that van?
I have a few great examples of how suddenly Rainbow Six games can kill you without warning. In campaign, this is less of an issue, but holy terrorist hunt, Batman. Both games are notorious for sudden death surprise ambushes by crackshot terrorists, but in Terrorist Hunt, this is borderline unforgivable. In T-Hunt, you spawn into the map and have a finite number of tangos to kill. The game doesn't spawn them all at once, and they don't spawn in the same spots either, so it's up to you and any partners to systematically clear the maps sector by sector, killing enemies as they spawn. Not only is it a frequent occurrence to clear a whole map and still have enemies left over, but it's also a frequent occurrence for an enemy to seemingly spawn late, perfectly positioned to blow you away before you can react. Not necessarily in view either, but off camera somewhere, which adds to the cheapness of it. I think most fans of the Vegas games would agree that the majority of the challenge of T-Hunt comes not from the enemy AI, but the enemy spawn behavior. Anyway, Vegas 2's environments are different from 1's, but they're still quite good. You still get the occasional Vegas city vista, which look good but different. Gone is the dark red aesthetic of the first game. I love the sky on this one. This penthouse is mad cool. How the other half lives, man. This fast rope is classic Vegas, including the insane rope physics. Always down for a long rope though. Chasing Miguel through the neighborhood and boneyard of signs is good stuff. I could see this game being disappointing if you wanted more casino shootouts, but the environments are brighter, more airy. Good Southwest flavor, even when it's not casinos. Whereas 1 delivered more casino vibes, 2 is also delivering less, which is backwards from how I remembered it, but there you have it. I've covered this already, but they just make it so satisfying to shoot dudes and watch the blood continue to spray out from follow-on shots as their dead body falls limply to the ground. I'm a simple man with simple tastes. I want to be able to watch this. Or this. Or this. Or this. This solo mission is tense and dark. Random shotgun noises and civilians screaming. These two games do a fair job telling their stories. I confess I had a hard time keeping up with what was going on through the first game. Both games use in-game conversations and calls to advance the plot instead of cinematics. Both stories primarily revolve around 1 or 2 days of non-stop operations, so this does a good job of selling the longest night of your life narrative style, since the player is never removed from the perspective of the player character in real time. But the plot details are kind of hard to follow, and by the end of 1, I still wasn't sure what a micropulse bomb was or what the terrorists' real plan was. Also, I totally forgot 1 ends on a cliffhanger, which would have been super unsatisfying if 2 hadn't come along. I'll go easy on the specifics, but what I thought the stories did well was tie into one another in some cool ways. 2 serves as both a prequel and a sequel to 1, and the ways their characters intersect and the plots of both games weave in and out was actually well done. Your main teammates in both games are the same, even though the player character changes, and other major characters wind up in the support roles as well. There's also a couple moments in 2 that narratively just fall flat. One is a scene where a room full of civilians gets gassed, and it doesn't land. They don't do enough to invest you in the stakes of the mission, and watching the janky animations as Mike tries to open the doors, followed by the dialogue after, simply doesn't coalesce. Shortly after, you come across a guy in a hazmat suit, and his lips didn't move while he talked to me, which also didn't help me engage with the scene. For a game series which prides itself on realism and authenticity, I was surprised at some of the weird fumbles they made in this department. I'll spare you guys the boring details, but one thing I was dying to know is, if Rainbow is a NATO unit whose members come from NATO countries, why are two of the main team members a South Korean guy and a Japanese guy? It's obviously not a big deal, but it's an eyebrow raiser. I'm almost surprised at myself for what I'm about to say, but I actually thought the character arcs were stronger in the Vegas games than the plots. There are some twists that might actually catch you by surprise, and specifically the main villain, who spans both stories, gets a decently fleshed out backstory and motivation. His characterization is enough to make me interested, as is Bishop's. Logan's from the first game, not as much. Clearing the villa at the end is sweet. Logan makes a guest appearance and his actor is also different, which is crazy because the old guy is so distinctive. And then some stuff happens to resolve all the open loops that I won't spoil. The Rainbow Six Vegas games had outstanding adversarial multiplayer. There were a variety of nice maps and game modes to choose from, but the bulk of all of our multiplayer matches were attack and defend at Calypso Casino. If you know, you know. The trademark Vegas game mode was attack and defend, which is nearly the only thing connecting the abomination that is Rainbow Six Siege to the last good games in the franchise. Attack and defend is an asymmetric objective-based game mode, and in a neat touch, the type of objective varied. Some had a package to pick up and carry to a safe zone, some had a bomb that needed planting, and others had a hostage who needed extracting. They could easily have just picked one of these styles for every match, so I always appreciated the bit of variety. Matches were always intense. In one, you can enable infinite respawns, ensuring games went on until the clock ran out or the objective was accomplished. 2 changed this by putting a cap on the max number of lives each player had, so you could win attack and defend matches by killing the enemy team's players enough times. This was kind of a shame, because people used to do 20-minute games in Vegas 1 to maximize XP from matches. In fact, if the attacking team got the package all the way back to the roof for their helo extract, the custom was to continue to hold it there against pursuing defenders until the last possible moment, just to milk the XP you'd get for the game. But this went away in 2, and the matches would get pretty dull when the teams were down to their last 1 or 2 contenders while the dead folks spectated, waiting for the next round. All things considered, the multiplayer was a blast. I sunk innumerable hours into both titles in my youth, and the majority of them were spent going toe-to-toe with the best players we could find. My buddies and I loved to host matches with 16 players, and stack the team so it was us against 12. We seldom lost. Ah, the good old days. One of the final things I wanted to touch on in this video is politics. Like most of you probably watching this, I've noticed that as the years go on, the big gaming press outlets seem to be cooling on military games, especially any games which portray the US military in a positive light, even if that is limited to mere implicit endorsement of US military force. You hear words like jingoistic or tone deaf dropped at the slightest provocation. Hosts of one gaming podcast I listened to recently dismissed military shooters as being something they liked when they were younger and dumber, but now they're far too sophisticated to enjoy something so vulgar. The fact that they all still adore the Grand Theft Auto games remains unexamined. A very popular video game YouTuber recently made a video that was highly dismissive of any military shooters that aren't critiques of the genre. Now consider Rainbow Six Vegas, released in 2006 when the global war on terror was at a fever pitch. You couldn't go 10 minutes without hearing the word terrorist. Most of the free world was at war, being patriotic was still largely uncontroversial, and people had general moral clarity about who the global bad guys were, namely, the ones who savagely and indiscriminately killed innocent people as much as they could. Counter-terror was always Rainbow's raison d'etre, a role they fulfilled in fiction before the attacks of 9/11. So putting out the 6th entry in a series about counter-terror operators wasn't groundbreaking during GWOT. But can you imagine the reception it would get now? Even the enemies in Vegas are almost exclusively white Americans, but it would still get ridiculed by a certain portion of the gaming intelligentsia as racist, jingoistic, tone-deaf propaganda. There's a fascinating video you should watch after this, which dives into the fraught development and cancellation of the follow-up to Vegas 2 called Rainbow Six Patriots. Based on what we know, it sounds like that game might have gotten its socio-political commentary uncomfortably close to real life. It's a shame we didn't see it. But God bless Vegas. Made in a bygone era where a studio could release this game without feeling like they needed to criticize or apologize for the military fantasy they nevertheless had to offer the public who was prepared to spend top dollar on it. Heaven help us if this game came out today. We'd have 100 think pieces on how problematic Rainbow Six games are and how uncritically they examine the causal factors of terrorism and Western foreign policy or colonialism or something. I made this meme that I think summarizes my thoughts nicely. In fact, I feel so strongly about the fact that terrorists are bad and they should die that I'm going to show you a supercut of a bunch more terrorists dying. I will go out on a limb and hazard a guess that just about anyone who has watched this far into the video mostly agrees with all this, which is why I felt confident putting it in here. Hopefully the comment section is people getting mad at me for slagging Eco and not because I'm glad when terrorists take dirt naps. By the way, in case anyone cares, I gave Eco 3 out of 5 stars when I played it. I don't think it's bad. My review is online if you feel like reading it. It starts with an Albert Einstein quote.
Please clap.
If Ubisoft wants to rehabilitate Rainbow Six's image, what they should do is reboot the franchise. They don't need to remake the Vegas games necessarily, but they should absolutely take cues from them. In my opinion, they should follow the blueprint laid out by Infinity Ward when they rebooted Modern Warfare. For my deep dive on that, click here. Appreciate y'all. Keep it clean.